they got Lil Durk in a hole for basically some BS. And right now we're going to show the paperwork.
Right after an inmate revealed Lil Durk's brutal conditions behind bars, new footage of his release went viral.
I know for a fact that's not the end of his story. Like, he coming from under that shit.
Rappers like G Herbo had already hinted that something big was coming, but no one knew the reason behind Durk's release was going to be this crazy. Let's break it down. New footage of Lil Durk goes viral. The recording from Durk's legal team set the tone. They described conditions that raised serious concerns. Limited access, harsh treatment, and a situation that had fans worried about his health and safety. That was the incident that set the tone for his release. Plus, fans are saying other rappers aren't really showing as much support as they should.
Smirk is in there, man, realizing the world don't stop spinning because you locked.
Understand why that jail release moment generated the reaction it did. You have to understand the timeline. On October 24th, 2024, Durk was arrested in Broward County, Florida by U.S. Marshals near Miami International Airport. The day before, on October 23rd, 5 members of his Only the Family collective had been indicted. Those 5 were Kayvon London Grant, DeAndre Dantrell Wilson, Keith Jones, David Brian Lindsay, and Asa Houston. Durk was named as the person who allegedly organized the entire operation. He was extradited to Los Angeles and arraigned on November 15, 2024. He pleaded not guilty. The judge ordered detention without bond. From that point forward, every attempt to get Durk out has failed. In December 2024, bail was denied. Prosecutors pointed to jail calls that showed rule violations, including using other inmates' phone accounts to make three-way calls. In May 2025, another bail review was denied because of jail infractions. In June 2025, yet another bail request was denied, with prosecutors citing evidence that he had attempted to flee to Dubai before his arrest. Every single time the answer has been the same: no. Then came August 2025. Durk was placed in solitary confinement after allegedly being found with an unauthorized Apple Watch. The Special Housing Unit, or SHU, is not a regular jail cell. It is isolation. Durk spent 131 days in that unit over 4 months. During that stretch, he was allowed 1 phone call per month. No in-person visits. No regular contact with anyone outside the walls. On January 6, 2026, his legal team filed a motion arguing that the extended solitary confinement violated federal regulations and potentially the ETH amendment. A review hearing took place on January 7th, and around January 15, 2026, Durk was moved out of the SHU and back into general population. A follow-up status hearing on the extended SHU detention had been scheduled for February 9, 2026, but it was cancelled because the issue was already resolved. He was already out of solitary. No new infractions or changes to his overall custody status have been reported since then. So Durk is still in federal custody. He is still being held without bond. He is still facing charges that carry a potential sentence of life in prison. But for the first time in months, he can make phone calls on a regular basis. He can have visits. He can interact with other people. And for a fan base that has been watching every court filing and every legal update like it is a playoff game, that small change felt enormous. His own lawyer called it a small but meaningful step. And that phrase captures the reality perfectly. It is meaningful, but it is small. Yet the real fight has not even started. The charges and the plot. The reason Durk is sitting in a federal detention center and not in his home studio is a set of charges that read like a script from a crime drama, except every name in it is real and 1 person is dead. Durk faces 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder for hire, 1 count of using interstate facilities to commit murder for hire resulting in death, and 1 count of using, carrying, and discharging firearms, including a machine gun, in furtherance of a crime of violence, resulting in death. If convicted on all counts, he could spend the rest of his natural life behind bars. Federal prosecutors have confirmed they will not seek the death penalty, but the stakes could not possibly be higher. This is not a situation where a plea deal gets you 5 years and a head nod. As his attorney, Drew Finling, explained in a conversation with DJ Vlad, this is a binary outcome kind of case.
Vlad, this is a life imprisonment case.
Okay.
There's no in between. This isn't state court. There's no, hey, we'll do 10, 15. It's a life case.
That statement sits at the center of everything. There is no middle ground here. There is no negotiated surrender to a lesser charge that gets Durk home in a few years. The federal system does not work that way, especially not in a case of this magnitude. Finling made that distinction between state and federal cases repeatedly throughout the interview, and it is a distinction that matters enormously.
If you and I talk, state cases are kind of middle school basketball, and federal cases are kind of the NBA all-star in terms of the complexity and everything that goes into it.
The complexity he is referring to starts with the underlying allegations. According to prosecutors, the entire chain of events traces back to November 2020 when Durk's close associate and F artist Devin Bennett, known as King Von, was killed during a confrontation outside an Atlanta nightclub involving the crew of Georgia rapper Tiki and Terrell Bowman, known as Wando Rondo. What prosecutors allege happened next is that Durk placed a bounty on Wando Rondo's life. That alleged bounty, according to the government's case, led to a failed assassination attempt on August 19, 2022 at a gas station near the Beverly Center Mall in Los Angeles. Wando Rondo survived the attack. His 24-year-old cousin, Sevialu P.A.B. Robinson, did not. Robinson was killed in the gunfire. The evidence the government has compiled to support these allegations is extensive and meticulously detailed. Prosecutors have presented flight records showing members traveled from Chicago to California using credit cards linked to Durk's label. They have hotel bookings. They have communications that they say tie the group directly to the plot. They allege that Durk orchestrated the operation by offering what the federal complaints describe as lucrative music opportunities and cash bounties as incentives to the people who carried it out. The picture the government is painting is one of a wealthy and powerful artist who used his resources and his influence to put a hit on another human being, and that hit went wrong and killed an innocent person. Adding another layer of gravity to the prosecution's case is the cooperation of at least one co-defendant. F Jam, whose real name is Jamonte Norman, has reportedly cooperated with authorities, providing information that implicated Durk in exchange for a potentially lighter sentence. In the federal system, cooperation carries a different weight than it does in state court. Finling addressed this directly when discussing how federal cooperators differ from state witnesses, referencing the infamous collapse of Lil Woody's testimony in the Young Thug RICO trial as an example of something that simply does not happen on the federal level.
So that just never happens in a federal case. And I'm saying this to the guy that did an iconic interview of Sammy the Bull Gravano.
Finling was making a sobering point. In the federal system, cooperating witnesses go through multiple interviews and appear before grand juries. If they change their story or recant, they face perjury charges and false statement charges on top of whatever they were already facing. The incentive structure is designed to lock people in. And it works. Federal cooperators do not get on the stand and fall apart the way Lil Woody did. They show up prepared and they deliver exactly what the government needs them to deliver, because their own freedom depends on it.
People are locked in. I mean, they are locked in. They're in front of grand juries. There are multiple interviews.
And that is part of what makes this case so perilous for Durk. Prosecutors also allege that he may be connected to additional bounties, including one on a family member of a witness and a separate Chicago murder, though no additional charges have been filed for those. The discovery materials in the case exceed 30,000 pages, a staggering volume that has been one of the primary reasons the trial has been pushed back again and again. The legal battle. If the charges represent the prosecution's sword, then the courtroom motions represent the shield that Durk's legal team has been swinging every chance they get. And the most fascinating battlefield in this entire case has been the fight over whether Lil Durk's own music can be used to put him in prison for the rest of his life. On February 4, 2026, prosecutors pushed to admit lyrics, videos, and imagery as evidence at trial, arguing that these creative works demonstrate motive and intent. Just 5 days later, on February 9, 2026, the judge issued a ruling that split the difference. Specific lyrics from the song Hanging with Wolves were barred from evidence. The line prosecutors wanted to use was a lyric about hopping on a flight with a warrant and daring law enforcement to catch him. The judge determined that those particular words related to flight risk, not to the core charges of murder for hire, and therefore were not admissible. Other lyrics and music videos, however, remain under consideration and could still be presented to a jury. Now, this fight over lyrics is not unique to Durk's case, but it has become one of the most contentious elements of it. Drew Finling has been vocal about his frustration with the practice of using rap lyrics as criminal evidence, and his arguments go far beyond the specifics of this one case. He frames it as a systemic issue that uniquely targets one genre of music and the predominantly black artists who create it.
And I'm sensitive to that issue because I don't know of another art form, and you have your finger on the pulse of rap as good as anybody in the world right now.
That observation opens the door to the larger argument Finling has been making. He challenges the idea that law enforcement has the expertise or even the willingness to understand how music production actually works. And he argues that this ignorance leads to dangerous misinterpretations that can cost people their freedom.
And I guarantee you that Vlad cannot tell me another musical genre in which the government plays the game.
The game Findling is describing is a process where prosecutors sift through thousands upon thousands of verses looking for phrases they can connect, however loosely, to criminal activity. He compared it to the children's puzzle Where's Waldo? And the comparison is striking because it suggests that the government is not analyzing evidence so much as hunting for anything that looks like it fits. The point lands hard if a media personality can invest the time to understand how punch-in recording sessions work, how lyrics get assembled over hours and hours of studio time, and how the final product is a creative construction rather than a diary entry. Then surely the people whose decisions can send a man to prison for life should be expected to do the same homework. But Findling's argument is that they do not, and that this failure has consequences that extend across the entire genre. One of the most critical pieces of the defense's strategy has centered on the song Wonderful Wayne and Jackie Boy, a track featuring Dirt and Babyface Ray. Prosecutors included this song in the superseding indictment, alleging that its lyrics celebrated and monetized the death of Sava Robinson and the attempted murder of Wendo Rondo. Findling laid out exactly why this allegation collapses under scrutiny. The defense investigated the production timeline and discovered that Durk's contribution to the song was recorded 7 months before the August 2022 shooting even took place.
And then we started doing our homework, interviewing the producers, and found out that that song and the Durk part of it was done 7 months beforehand.
7 months. That single fact, if proven at trial, demolishes the prosecution's claim that the song was created to celebrate or profit from the shooting. As Findling put it bluntly, unless Durk had psychic abilities, the song had nothing to do with the incident. The defense also addressed the issue of fan edits on YouTube that added screaming sounds similar to audio of Quandrondo reacting to his cousin's death. Finding clarified that these edits were made by random fans in their basements and garages and had absolutely no connection to Durk, Babyface Ray, or any of the corporate entities involved in producing the music beyond the lyrics fight. The defense has filed multiple motions to dismiss the case entirely. In April 2025, a motion to dismiss for misleading the grand jury, specifically regarding the altered lyrics, was denied. In November 2025, the defense sought dismissal based on undisclosed death threats made against the judge and prosecutor, arguing that these threats compromised the integrity of the proceedings. That request was also denied. A separate motion to dismiss the indictment for vagueness was denied on November 18, 2025. Each motion denied, each argument rejected, and yet the defense continues to push because in a federal case with life imprisonment on the line, you fight on every single front available to you. Durk's family has also weighed in publicly, releasing a statement that captures the emotional weight of the lyrics debate. They said the government presented false evidence to a grand jury, that Durk has always used music to tell stories, express pain, and heal, and that they refuse to stay silent as black artists continue to be criminalized for their creativity. The bond fight and the question of flight. Every single time Durk's legal team has asked a judge to let him wait for trial at home instead of inside the Metropolitan Detention Center, the answer has been no. And every single time, the reason has circled back to the same fundamental question. If you let this man out, will he run? Prosecutors have built their flight risk argument on a specific set of facts. When Durk was arrested on October 24, 2024, he was picked up by U.S. Marshals near Miami International Airport. Authorities alleged he was attempting to flee the country, citing multiple international flight bookings made under his name and the names of associates, including flights to Dubai and Switzerland. That allegation has been the anchor, weighing down every bail request since. The defense, however, has presented a detailed counter-narrative that challenges the government's version of events. Findling explained that his team obtained the complete flight itineraries and found that all of the bookings ended in Dubai, not at the intermediate stops the government had highlighted. The prosecution had presented incomplete information showing flights that stopped in cities like Rome without revealing that the final destination on every single itinerary was Dubai. But the detail that Findling emphasized most was the nature of the bookings themselves. The commercial flights were booked in economy class in back rows and middle seats. And Findling made an argument that cuts through the legal formality with blunt common sense.
Each of them ended in Dubai, but they were row like 52 middle seat, and respectfully, it's Lil Durk.
The implication is clear. A man of Durk's wealth and international fame is not going to flee the country by cramming himself into a middle seat in the back of a commercial airliner for 17 hours. It would be physically uncomfortable and logistically absurd for someone who could be recognized by practically any young person on that plane. Findling argued that the commercial bookings were not serious escape plans, and that a private jet was only booked as an alternative when the commercial options proved impractical.
He's not going to sit in the middle row for 17 hours in the back of the plane. A lot of people would. It's just more of a distraction to him.
Findling then revealed a piece of information that most people following the case do not know. After the defense presented the complete itineraries to the federal probation office, the probation officer reviewed all of the evidence and concluded that Durk was not a flight risk. The probation officer made that recommendation to the court. The court did not follow it. But the fact that an independent federal officer tasked with evaluating these exact questions sided with the defense is significant. The bond package the defense has proposed is substantial. It includes $1 million in cash, $900,000 in real estate, $150,000 from an associate, around-the-clock armed security, and electronic monitoring. That is not a casual offer. That is a package designed to eliminate every conceivable risk the court might identify. And still, the answer has been no. Findling has argued passionately that Durk has powerful reasons to stay. He has children, he has family, he has a mother he loves and a father he did not have a real relationship with until 2019. A connection that was interrupted almost immediately by the pandemic.
He's got kids, he's got family, he's got his mom who he loves, he's got his dad who he's waited until 2019, after 26 years to have a relationship with.
That relationship with his father, decades in the making and barely established before Co shut the world down, adds a deeply personal dimension to the bond argument. This is not an abstract legal filing. This is a man's connection to the people he cares about most, and Findling has argued that those connections are precisely what make him someone who would never abandon them by fleeing. The bond fight is not over. Findley indicated that the defense intends to bring the issue before the district court judge, seeking what is called a de novo review, meaning a completely fresh evaluation of all the evidence. The hope is that a different judge looking at the complete picture, rather than the prosecution's curated version, will reach a different conclusion. But the federal system moves slowly, and every day that passes without a bond ruling is another day Durk spends inside. Durk himself has reportedly submitted paperwork exploring bond or house arrest options, but no release has been granted.
They got Lil Durk in a hole for basically some BS, and right now we're going to show the paperwork.
The prosecution continues to cite the flight bookings and the jail infractions as evidence that he cannot be trusted to comply with the conditions of release. It is a cycle that has repeated itself multiple times now, and each repetition chips away a little more at the hope that Durk might be able to prepare for his trial from outside the walls of the MDC. The road ahead and what people are saying, the trial that will determine whether Lil Durk spends the rest of his life in prison, has been postponed so many times that the original date feels like ancient history. It was first set for January 7th, 2025. Then it was pushed to October 2025, then January 2026. And now the most recent scheduling puts the trial start date at April 24th, 2026, with a potential backup date of May 4th, 2026, depending on final scheduling decisions. Each delay has been driven primarily by the sheer volume of discovery materials and requests from co-defendants for additional preparation time. Durk himself has reportedly objected to the latest postponement, expressing eagerness to go to trial and clear his name. That detail says something about his mindset. A man who is guilty typically does not push to accelerate the process. A man who believes in his own innocence wants his day in court as soon as possible. Between now and that April date, there are still significant legal battles to be fought. The question of which lyrics and music videos will be admissible at trial remains partially unresolved. The ruling on February 9th barred specific lines from Hanging with Wolves, but other creative works are still under consideration. Every piece of evidence that gets admitted or excluded before a trial reshapes the landscape that the jury will see. And in a case where the prosecution is leaning heavily on circumstantial evidence, communications, travel records, and the testimony of cooperating witnesses, those pretrial rulings carry enormous weight. Finding has described his overall impression of Durk's mental state throughout this ordeal as remarkably resilient. When asked how Durk was handling the pressure of facing life in prison, Finding's answer painted a picture of a man who has not allowed the circumstances to break him down. He described him as confident, polite, and respectful, and that composure extends beyond the attorney-client relationship. Finding said, Durk is engaged, attentive, and genuinely appreciative of every member of the legal team.
Enjoy my time with him. He smiles. He smiles from ear to ear. He's just respectful to everybody on the team.
Those descriptions stand in sharp contrast to the image prosecutors are trying to construct of a cold-blooded orchestrator of violence. Whether or not a jury ever hears about Durk's demeanor in custody is another matter entirely. But for those following the case from the outside, the portrait that emerges from his own attorney is one of composure under unimaginable pressure. And then there are the people in Durk's world who have spoken publicly about what they believe will happen. G Herbo, a fellow Chicago rapper who has known Durk for years and collaborated with him musically, was asked directly about the situation during an interview. His response was not hedged or cautious. It was a declaration of absolute certainty that Durk would survive this chapter.
I know for a fact that's not the end of his story. Like, he coming from under that shit.
Herbo framed Durk's situation within a broader pattern that he has observed throughout their careers. He talked about watching Durk reinvent himself over and over again, facing obstacles that would have caused most people to quit and emerging from each one stronger and more successful than before.
I always been somebody that, like, through all the adversity of any trials and tribulations, he always been able to, like, overcome that shit and reinvent.
That ability to adapt and rebuild is what Herbo identified as the quality that separates Durk from everyone else. It is not just talent, it is the refusal to stay down.
That's what really make him the GOAT to me, because when we come from where we come from and been through the stuff that we've been through, it's like, it's easy to give up.
But Herbo also acknowledged the painful reality of the situation. When asked how difficult it is to watch Durk go through this, he did not sugarcoat it. He called it painful, and he pointed to a truth that extends beyond any one person's legal case. When you reach a certain level of success, people work overtime to bring you down.
A lot of times when you get that big, people work overtime to try to pull you down, to try to pull you off of that mountaintop, you feel what I'm saying?
Herbo then made a prediction that carries the weight of someone who has seen Durk defy the odds before. He said that this moment, as dark as it is, will ultimately produce a version of Durk that is more dangerous, more focused, and more determined than anything the world has seen from him yet.
Sometimes that shit just make you a different type of animal, type of beast, where you just like hearing like, damn, everybody counting me.
Whether that prediction comes true depends entirely on what happens inside a courtroom in Los Angeles sometime around April 2026. The discovery is still being reviewed. The motions are still being filed. The cooperating witnesses are still being prepared. And Durk is still sitting inside the Metropolitan Detention Center waiting for the moment he gets to stand in front of 12 people and tell them his side of the story. But what do you think? Will he be getting out of this very soon? Or is this all going to spiral into something disastrous? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. For more videos like this, click on this next card on your